I think provides stability and harmony, better understanding of other people.
The VSL is one of the planks of Victorian multiculturalism, a really grassroots plank. We provide an essential service. We're full of people who are passionate about languages.
It's an important organisation to provide language tuitions to students who do not have access to their language of choice during the day school hours.
No other organisation in Victoria or in Australia can do what the VSL is doing. You can imagine that the VSL has kept alive so many languages that would have been lost if it hadn't been for the VSL.
Le samedi matin, je me réveillais à 7 heures.
Yegetera imambara yelaminila.
Yelutilu no wida yekata yesikusika.
Yerbasla yecho chekuchekawa ਬਾਏ ਸਾਡੋਮਾ
ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਨੀਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਦਿਨ ਸਕੂਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਕ ਕਲਾਸ ਲਵਾਉਂਗੀ
Every Saturday morning, some 14,000 Victorian school students get up early to attend language classes at the Victorian School of Languages. Utilising 40 school sites, the VSL has been running language classes for the past 80 years at various locations throughout Victoria, providing a service to students who do not have access to their language of choice through their regular school curriculum.
We're Australia's oldest specialist language school, and it's a particularly Victorian product, you know. It originated in discussions in 1934, started in 1935, so it's always been a very exotic, very cosmopolitan, and it's staffed by people that are very enthusiastic about teaching their language.
In the very beginning, the school didn't have a name. Education department bureaucrats at the start called it a special experiment. The idea was that they would pilot the languages to see how much interest there was, to see if there was a lot of enrolments. In 1935, when the Italian classes started, there were 60 students and 55 teachers who enrolled in the Italian classes, because it wasn't just students who enrolled, there was also a lot of education department teachers who were interested in learning Italian themselves. For Japanese, there was more than 50 students who enrolled.
Originally there was only one centre, first McRobinson Girls High School, then University High School, and then other centres, other high schools were open.
The school in 1942 moved to University High School was because of the war, and the US Army requisitioned the McRobinson Girls High School because they wanted to use it as their headquarters.
Other centres, other high schools were open. Next one off was Princess Hill High School, and then Brunswick High, and then Eastern Suburbs, and then it moved into country Victoria.
Although the school grew in the number of languages and classes it offered, the Victorian School of Languages spent the first 30 years of its existence as a niche project, without a name and largely ignored by the Department of Education.
Once the structure was set up, when the post-war immigration period began in the 50s and 60s, new languages approached the education department because, they wanted, obviously, the immigrants wanted to maintain the language, and so the school increased dramatically, in the 60s.
In 1970, the school appeared in the Education Gazette with the name the Saturday School of Languages. And then in 1971, when the school appeared in the Education Gazette, its name was the Saturday School of Modern Languages.
When I became principal of the school was known as Saturday School of Modern Languages, which was a little thing hidden Princess Hill High in a little room.
The office itself was a tiny stockroom, and the school's possessions basically just consisted of a steel locker, a filing cabinet, and a typewriter.
I think the Department of Education was a bit ashamed of the school. But still they couldn't refuse the fact that there was a demand for such a thing.
In its early development, the VSL wasn't actually a school. It was a service. And because of that, it tended to suffer from a very low status.
Despite finally being given a name after 30 years of operation, the Saturday School of Modern Languages still lacked the vital funding needed to operate optimally. Many teachers had to conduct classes with limited resources.
The school was given some resources, but it wasn't given the same sorts of resources that were given to normal schools. So they were given support where it came to expanding classes or adding languages on if it could be justified. In terms of actual material resources, there was very little support.
I remember in those days that in order to be able to give my students, get them to listen to a song in Turkish, I was climbing on the roof, and on my roof at that time, I stretched wires onto the roof in order to get better reception, so that I can record from the shortwave radio receiver onto the cassette player and take those to the classroom to get the students to listen to.
We expanded from few languages of not many students. We grew. We opened a few country centers. And I think when I left, there were about 800 teachers, tutors, and 33 or 34 languages at other.
The school became the Victorian School of Languages from January 1988, and from that time it became recognised for the first time as an official state school. So before that, it hadn't actually been considered an official school. And from January 1988 onwards, it had a new name and it had a new status as an official state school, and it was entitled to all the other funding and all the other arrangements that any other normal state school would be entitled to.
The Australia of the time when I came here, you could not speak openly the language. I couldn't speak Italian openly because we had such a bad reaction. And as a matter of fact, one day a friend and I were speaking aloud. It was Saturday. I think we had a few beers, and we were assaulted. So after that aggression we had in the street, I offered to teach Italian. Yeah. Put an ad in the paper and a few students, and that's how I started.
Australia saw a rise in its immigrant population, first from Europe, then Asia, and the rest of the world, and this was reflected in the classes the VSL offered. Despite its growth and will, with centres opening up all over the Melbourne metropolitan area and country Victoria, the VSL operated as a single school within the Department of Education.
The understanding and acceptance of multiculturalism, multilingualism, has come a long way since the expansion of the migration program of the late 1940s. It has to be said that in the early period of the 1950s and 60s in particular, the acceptance of other cultures, of other nations, of other languages was very limited. In some cases, even hostile. The ability for Victoria and Australia to have overcome most of those prejudices is quite astonishing.
In its modern form, the school has diversified. However, it continues to perform its core function and follow trends in migration within Victoria in order to cater to emerging migrant communities.
When the school was given a name and given a structure, part of this new structure included the establishment of a school council. Our school council is made up of about 18 colleagues who, besides being passionate, which is taken for granted, but they have expertise in the area of languages. And if not expertise, they have a connection with the community or ethnic community. Our role is mainly to play one of advocacy and representing different areas and ideas that can enhance the way the school functions and gets out to the broader community.
So now we have, from 2 languages back in 1935, we have around about 50. And as I said, they're emerging all the time, so we do get requests for new languages to be introduced, depending upon new arrivals or new communities that emerge.
As a result of many years of just growth and being there and delivering something that was very, very important to the growing community, and especially the community that grew as a result of immigration, it then became an entity that was vital and essential.
And it's been an enormously powerful thing politically and socially for Victoria to be able to demonstrate how it has supported multiculturalism in this state.
The European languages the numbers or enrolments are decreasing, whereas the new emerging communities are the ones that are kind of increasing. So, for example, your Dari, your Persian, kids from Afghanistan or Middle Eastern languages, also your Indian languages, so your Punjabi and Hindi. And so the thing is that, it's changed in that respect.
The VSL's significance to the community began to extend beyond offering academic benefits to its students. It allowed students to connect with and understand their backgrounds, thus strengthening ethnic communities and their identities within Australian society.
The VSL currently teaches students from about 4 or 5 different language groupings from Myanmar, Burma. And those people have only recently arrived in Australia, and it's very moving when you talk to them because their language, for example, Chin Hakka and Karen, they were forbidden to use them in Burma. So I went to a community gathering where the speeches were made, and they said, we had to come here to be allowed to have our kids study our language at year 12. It's never happened in Myanmar. So that's a pretty amazing human rights role that the VSL is playing.
We do want to learn our language, and it is important for us, and we get the opportunities that we need it, and we would love to learn about it.
I was so grateful that they make VSL school, so cause for younger generations like my niece and nephew, they normally speak English. They can't speak Korean. They can speak Korean, but some more deep meaning they don't know how to describe it, and that they also have difficult learning as well.
I want to learn Korean because it's my language and my family speak Korean, and a lot of Korean people also speak Korean. So the reason I wanted to learn is so I can communicate with them in my own language.
So it's really helpful that they can relearn their own language again.
It tells me who I am and where I come from.
Important thing, which at the time I didn't get the approval of, was to allow primary students to join the school, which were not allowed. But I decided not let them be because a sister, brother came and they're little kid. So we opened up to primary teaching, and then and now look at that. It's very good now.
The great majority, in fact everybody in the world, learns their first language from their family, from their parents. We call it the mother tongue, precisely because in most cases it's learned by infants with their mothers. Now, if we spread that more widely to include everybody in the family, we would see that intimacy describes a situation in which a child is allowed to grow in the language.
The parents now, they got a big, a passion for their kids to to learn a second language, especially their mother tongue. So as a second language, Sinhalese, I'm teaching Sinhalese. I believe that the parents now realize the value of learning a second language.
I met one of the parents who, she was born in Lebanon, but she came here when she was 2 years old. She doesn't even understand Arabic though, but she encourages her children to go to Arabic school and to learn the language.
They don't only come to learn, sit at a desk and listen to the teacher. They will be interacting and socialising and learning more about their own culture. And they're also in the VSL schoolyard, they are interacting with other cultures and they are able to learn about others. So it really is part of this big multicultural picture.
The students in our schools today, they'll be living, they'll be working, they'll be studying, they'll be travelling more than any other generation. And it's very important for them to have the languages, skills and the cultural skills to be able to work in that world.
If we are to indulge culture and interaction with the culture itself, not language as only a means of communication, maybe the main theme is that we kind of bring peace throughout language. So the language of using weapon or violence is not the language that we need, definitely nowadays.
It is so important that through language, I think you can learn also different culture and you can understand different people, and it is really very important.
One of the strengths of our multicultural society is that we celebrate our multicultural heritage, we celebrate language, and the VCL has a big role to play in making sure that we protect that and expand it.
Oh, barbaprillos. Oh, barbaprillos. Igenagalo. Igenagalo. Ulimegalo. Ulimegalo. Yanakanituba. Yanakanituba. Ospunyamera. Ospunyamera.
It allows kids to have a peer group on Saturday mornings. Perhaps, say, for example, you study Dutch or Hungarian or Filipino. You meet with other people who care about that language and culture. Then you go back to your mainstream school where perhaps people don't even know what Filipino or Tagalog is or what the Dutch language is all about. So, to me, that's an incredible thing.
Unlike any other school in Australia, we do both face-to-face after-hours classes and distance education. So this gives us a sort of critical mass that one area can work with the other and they reinforce each other, so we get a considerable advantage out of that.
The school itself, at its Thornbury head office, develops much of the coursework and material for distance education. The school's course development section is a leader in the development of online language courses and digital materials.
We work in course development, so we get the raw materials from the teachers and writers. We produce books, a number of courses, about 70 courses for use by our distance education students, but then the materials are also adapted and provided for classroom use, both in our centres and more widely.
Particularly as a distance education provider, you need to write courses for students that are at a distance, the freestanding material, self-paced material, etc. And so this gives us great expertise in course development, which we then can also use to bolster our face-to-face classes, but significantly also provided to regular schools. So this becomes a centre of excellence that all schools in Victoria can benefit from.
Especially with the new emerging languages that don't have any textbooks at all or limited number of textbooks. If we can find the right teachers, we fund them and they write and we edit. We have support groups and we print our own textbooks. Recently, we're moving into, for a number of years, we've moved into the development of interactive online courses. We managed to get a grant from the federal government to develop Chinese online. It's a different way of teaching, but it's labour intensive, so it's a very good product, and we make that available to all schools in Australia.
the school boasts 15,000 students over its 40 centres and distance education programs. With classes conducted outside of regular school hours, all students have to give up a bit of their spare time in order to study their extra language.
I love French, and the Victorian School of Languages actually offers me the opportunity to study properly and also make friends, of course. So I see this as a very entertaining way of learning the language.
For me, I enjoy coming here because I get to learn about my culture and my background and my language. I feel I am Greek, even though I was born in Australia. I feel both Australian and Greek.
I actually wanted to practice my French. I speak it at home, but I don't write it. I don't learn anything about it. So I wanted to, learn more things about French.
My favorite part of my Saturday morning class is seeing my friends and learning about my language.
Where you get a great environment you study in. So it's the Punjabi, everyone speaks Punjabi with you, you learn a lot of new things, and you can also stay in your roots. You can, like, if you stay with your mother tongue language, it's very grateful. It's always better for you to speak as many languages as you can.
I chose to give out some of my free time to study it, and I actually think it's very entertaining, and I don't miss my Saturdays at all.
I am not missing my Saturday morning because there's friends I can only see here at school, and I'm happy to see them every morning.
Students gain an incredible amount of expertise in the language with the grammar, the reading, writing, listening, speaking activities that we give them, so that they become quite proficient in Year 11 and Year 12. The motivation I gain from teaching at the Victorian School of Languages, I've been there 15 years now, is basically to take students down a journey, and the journey is basically to learn a second language and to motivate them and to perhaps make them realise that the potential that this second language can give them, and at our centre as well as at the VSL distance education.
I come to Bulgarian school and learn the language so that I can speak it better at home, I can speak it with my grandparents, and just learn a lot about the language, yeah.
I know that, like, if I live here for a long time, I might not know how to speak the language, and I think having like more than one language to speak is very important because you can help other peoples as well.
I've been to Greece a couple of times, had holidays there, but I plan on maybe possibly going there to stay there to learn more about the language and the culture in the future, if possible.
So I think I might become a teacher of probably Greek and English. I'm considering French as well.
J'aimerais être scientifique, travailler dans la chimie ou la physique.
My aim is to finish my Year 12 in my own language, so I can reteach the younger children in this school, like, teaching my own language.
In 2015, in its 80th year of operation, the Victorian School of Languages continues to create pathways and opportunities for Victorian students, having grown from its humble beginnings as a special experiment to establishing itself as an invaluable part of Victoria's education system. Other Australian states, and indeed some other parts of the world, are modelling multi-language schools on the VSL structure. One can imagine that the Victorian School of Languages' importance will only continue to grow in the coming years as Australia becomes more interconnected with the global village.
Learning a language, particularly in primary school, it helps so much in terms of the child's brain development, socially, in terms of their English language literacy, proficiency. So it helps students in the whole of their studies.
The most important benefit, in my view, is the satisfaction that individual students gain by speaking the language, being able to read a newspaper, novel, watch a play, watch a film, etc. So that to me is the key thing.
language is like the tool to achieve what you want, whether it's the little things that an infant might want to the more complex desires of an older person. And then in relationships that you have with your friends and with partners in life, intimacy is a really important aspect of the way in which we learn and use languages.
You can imagine a kid would learn the language from the kitchen, from the mother, and after they will never speak again. But when it's recognized by the school, then they're proud of it.
The teaching of language is really understanding of the other cultures and other countries, and in that sense, really, this emphasis of 8 years of teaching foreign languages is so special, and I think it really contributed.
Here we are, 80 years on, we're celebrating big time this year, our 80th celebrations. We've got a number of events across the year.
80 years for any institution to celebrate, I think is a wonderful achievement, and there's been some great leadership, there's been some great support right throughout the community from VSL.
We've kind of made it possible that we would be a force that you couldn't do without, and will grow as we go into the future, and therefore I feel that the VSL is here to stay.
La mattina mi sveglio di solito verso le 7:30. И след това моя баща ми кара до българското училище тук.
Normalement, je marche à pied, mais quand il pleut, je prends le train.
Sabato mattina studio italiano.
Κάνω πολλά άλλα πράγματα στο σχολείο, αλλά ελληνικά είναι η αγαπημένη μου.
Tous les samedis matins, mes amis dorment ou font du sport, mais moi je vais à l'école.